The president's war powers were the subject of votes in both the House and the Senate yesterday. We brought you the news yesterday morning that several Republicans in the House defected to help pass the resolution. But a similar effort failed in the Senate just a few hours later. CBS News congressional reporter Torian Small joins us from Capitol Hill this morning. So bring us up to speed on those votes. And where do things go from here, Torian?
Yeah, so we saw yesterday in the House another resolution pass successfully with the House with 4 Republicans. That's Representative Tom Barrett of Michigan, Representative Warren Davidson of Ohio, of course, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who's been a thorn in the president's side since his falling out with him over the Epstein files. And then also Representative Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, who's in a tough reelection bid right now. Hours later, though, we saw a similar resolution come up before the Senate, and that unfortunately for Democrats there did not successfully pass, partly because we only saw one Republican, Susan Collins of Maine, support that resolution. Lisa Murkowski and Rand Paul, who previously supported resolutions, were not on the floor.
Hey everyone, John here. The answer isn't what you think. The House erupted in roaring, unprecedented cheers after delivering a devastating blow to Trump-seasoned lawmakers celebrating like never before. The moment marked the most explosive scene of his entire second term. The chaos was immediate and overwhelming. Legislators were shouting at each other across the aisle. Some were hugging. Others were pointing fingers with wild fury. The speaker's gavel was pounding uselessly against the podium, completely drowned out by the sheer volume of the uproar. This was the House of Representatives descending into what can only be described as controlled pandemonium. And what had triggered this extraordinary meltdown?
To support that vote. John Fetterman, the Democrat from Pennsylvania, also voted against that resolution, joining with Republicans again to essentially stymie the effort there. Even though if that were to pass, these are largely symbolic resolutions. They hold no bearing or teeth and no force of law for the president. Democrats in the House are now considering their options whether to move forward, but I think this is notable considering the midterms are coming up, and this is an opportunity to express to their constituents that they are pressing back against the president against this war.
And Torian, there's been some new developments concerning the confirmation vote for the president's pick for attorney general. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, we have a date for Todd Blanche's vote out of committee. That will be on Thursday, July 30th. It originally appeared on the committee's, Judiciary Committee's agenda yesterday. The deal there, though, is that as per customs of this panel, any member is allowed to essentially do a holdover, give it a 7-day waiting period before a vote happens. That's what we're seeing in this case. I think what we're watching, though,
the House had just passed a war powers resolution that forcibly terminates Trump's unauthorized military campaign against Iran. Not negotiated, not delayed, ended immediately, completely. The vote was 215 to 208. And with that single act, Congress stripped the commander-in-chief of his authority to continue this conflict. Think about the magnitude of what just occurred. The House of Representatives voted to take away a sitting president's war-making power. They voted to stop an active military engagement that had already claimed American lives. They voted to tell the most powerful man on earth that he could not continue a war he started without permission. The chamber went absolutely insane because everyone understood the historic nature of what had just happened. This was Congress reasserting itself in a way it hadn't done in generations.
Is what happens with Senators Cornyn and Tillis. Those two have had trepidation around supporting this nomination for different reasons. Cornyn expressed concerns about the anti-weaponization fund, and then Tillis said that he wouldn't be supporting Blanche until he met with the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. We'll see if their minds have changed next week when it goes before the panel for a vote, but that will be the first time this panel considers his nomination, and then the success of that that will determine whether or not he makes it to the floor for a vote. Darlene Graham, Senator Graham's, Lindsey Graham's sister and replacement for his seat after his passing, was just sworn in yesterday as well to this committee. So now there are 12 Republicans to 10 on that panel, 10 Democrats on that panel, meaning there will take 2 Republicans to defect in order to block his nomination. But again, we'll see when that first vote finally happens on the 30th.
This was the legislative branch finally standing up to an executive that had grown far too powerful. But here is where the story gets truly wild. Speaker Mike Johnson, Trump's loyal ally and the highest-ranking Republican in the House, had physically tried to prevent this vote from ever occurring. 2 weeks earlier, when this same resolution was on the verge of passing, Johnson did something extraordinary. He shut down all House floor action abruptly. He used his power as Speaker to halt proceedings entirely. He killed the vote by simply refusing to let it happen. It was an act of legislative sabotage that left even seasoned observers stunned.
All right, everyone, now let's continue to showcase what's happening right now on the House floor as we have lawmakers continuing to speak right now after they just passed the War Powers resolution. Let's listen in on Live Now.
Fine. They're there training the Lebanese armed forces. They're fine. This is not what it's about. If you read the War Powers section of 5C, it's very clear. It is in writing in the law of the War Powers Resolution, War Powers Act. So it's really important that we understand and not get confusion. But I want to share a so-called, Amal Khalil. This is a photo of a very, very prominent Lebanese journalist. Amal Khalil, she was targeted and killed. Amal and her colleague Zainab were reporting devastation in southern Lebanon when Israeli drones struck her car near them, killing 2 civilians. Amal and Zainab sought shelter in a nearby building, but Israel then struck the building, trapping them under the rubble. But it gets worse. It gets worse. When rescued medical workers finally arrived at the scene to rescue Zainab, they came under Israeli fire before they could rescue Amal.
The Speaker of the House, the person responsible for ensuring fair debate and democratic process, had deliberately blocked his own members from voting on something they clearly wanted to decide. Johnson's first attempt at sabotage worked. He stopped the resolution dead in its tracks. But the rebellion that followed grew far too large for him to contain a second time. Too many Republicans had reached their breaking point. Too many saw their political futures evaporating because of this war. Too many were hearing from their constituents that enough was enough. The pressure became unbearable. The Speaker could not stop the inevitable. When the vote finally happened, 4 Republicans made the politically dangerous decision to cross the aisle. 4 Republicans voted with every single Democrat. 4 Republicans looked Donald Trump in the metaphorical eye and said no. They voted against their own president.
They were prevented from returning to the site for hours, Mr. Speaker. Amal was dead by the time her body was recovered over 6 hours later. Amal is only one victim of many of the Israeli military's deliberate and indiscriminate bombings and targeting even of journalists in Lebanon. Israel has killed 250 journalists and media workers across Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen, even Iran. Our country should not be sharing intelligence and coordinating strikes with the military that hunts and kills journalists for sport. We must end the U.S. support for this invasion. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my good colleague and one of the co-sponsors of the resolution, my gentlewoman from Illinois.
The gentlewoman from Illinois is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, again, I want to rise to point out the hypocrisy of those who would claim to care about our children while turning a blind eye to the scale of child suffering inflicted by Trump and Netanyahu's unlawful, unaccountable military operations in Lebanon. And yes, I did say Trump and Netanyahu's military operations.
They voted to end his war, and in doing so, they sealed their fate as targets of Trump's unrelenting fury. The scenes of chaos were not confined to the House floor. On that same explosive day, a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing featuring Secretary of State Marco Rubio descended into absolute screaming madness. Democratic Representative Ted Lieu went directly after Rubio with an intensity that shocked everyone present. Lieu began shouting accusations that Rubio had been lying to Congress. not about policy disagreements or diplomatic strategies. Liu accused Rubio of lying about something far more alarming: Trump's mental and physical condition. Liu screamed that Rubio was concealing the truth about whether Trump falls asleep during official meetings, during war briefings, during intelligence sessions, during moments when the nation's security depended on the president's full attention. The hearing erupted into chaos. Liu pressed harder, demanding answers about Trump's fitness to serve as commander-in-chief while running an active military campaign. He wanted to know if the president was literally sleeping through critical national security discussions. Rubio fired back with equal ferocity. The Secretary of State called the accusations absurd, ridiculous, completely unfounded. He denied everything with a passion that surprised many observers. But here is the fascinating psychological twist. Rubio's furious denial actually made the story worse. His aggressive pushback made people believe there was fire behind the smoke. If Trump weren't actually falling asleep in meetings, why would Rubio respond with such volcanic anger? Why would he be so defensive if there was nothing to hide? The denial itself became evidence. The ferocity of the response convinced people that Liu's accusations had struck a nerve, touched something real, exposed something troubling. Now, the story exploded across every platform. The narrative that the President of the United States might be falling asleep during war briefings went viral within hours. It dominated cable news, it flooded social media. It became the talk of Washington. Supporters were scrambling to defend Trump, while detractors seized on the allegations as proof of what they had long suspected. This connects directly to something that has been building behind the scenes: the growing movement among lawmakers to invoke the 25th Amendment. Over 70 representatives have already signed on to efforts exploring whether Trump remains capable of fulfilling his constitutional duties. The 25th Amendment is not about crimes or corruption, it is about capacity. It is about whether the president can physically and mentally perform the job. And if there is credible evidence that Trump is falling asleep during national security briefings, that becomes ammunition for those seeking to remove him through constitutional means. The timing of this revelation was devastating for the White House because it coincided perfectly with the war powers' defeat. Trump found himself simultaneously losing control of military policy and facing questions about his basic fitness to lead. The combination was potentially fatal to his presidency. His response was immediate, defiant, and characteristically aggressive. Trump took to Truth Social with the fury of a wounded animal. He called the Republicans who voted against him unpatriotic. He said they were betraying the country. He labeled them weak and disloyal. Then he escalated dramatically. Trump vowed he would never resign. He pledged he would never comply with congressional demands. He dared Congress to try to remove him, essentially challenging them with a come-and-get-me attitude that reflected either extraordinary confidence or catastrophic miscalculation. The war itself had been running for over 3 months without any congressional approval. It started on February 28th, and from the very beginning, Trump never asked for permission. He never sought authorization. He simply launched a military campaign against Iran using his executive authority as commander-in-chief. And now it was early June, meaning this conflict had been grinding on for over 100 days without a single vote from the people's representatives. American soldiers had died in that time. American families had received those dreaded notifications. American blood had been spilled in a war that Congress never authorized. The human cost was staggering, but there was also an economic dimension that made this increasingly untenable for Republicans facing re-election. Gas prices had spiked dramatically because of the conflict. Americans were paying significantly more at the pump, and they were furious about it. Every time someone filled their tank, they were reminded of Trump's unauthorized war. Every dollar extra spent on gasoline became a political message. The economic pain compounded the moral outrage, creating a perfect storm of discontent that threatened to sweep Republican incumbents out of office in November. Republicans in swing districts saw their poll numbers collapsing. Republicans in purple states watched their leads evaporate. Republicans in competitive races realized that supporting this war might cost them their careers. The political calculus shifted dramatically, forcing representatives to choose between loyalty to Trump and survival in their districts. 4 of them made the choice to prioritize their own political futures over presidential loyalty. Now the resolution is heading to the Senate, and the drama is far from over. The Senate will vote on its own companion measure, and intelligence suggests there are already 4 Republican senators prepared to vote against Trump. 4 senators ready to end the war, 4 senators willing to defy their president on a matter of national security. This is not a symbolic gesture. This is a genuine threat to Trump's authority. If the Senate passes its version of the resolution, Trump faces 2 terrible options. He can sign the measure and end his own war, effectively admitting defeat and acknowledging that Congress was right while he was wrong. Or he can veto the resolution and trigger an override vote that he is almost certain to lose. Either way, he loses. Either way, his image as an invincible political force takes a catastrophic hit. Think carefully about the mathematics of the veto scenario. To sustain a veto, Trump needs 67 senators to vote against the override. That means he needs every single Republican, all 53 of them, to support him. But he also needs at least 14 Democrats to cross the aisle and vote with him. That is simply not going to happen. No Democrat is going to vote to uphold Trump's veto on a war they have opposed from the beginning. The math does not work. Trump cannot win this battle. The override would succeed, Congress would strip him of his military authority, and he would suffer a humiliating defeat broadcast to the entire world. Even signing the resolution would be damaging because it would show Trump bending to congressional will, something he has never done willingly. Both paths lead to the same destination, a weakened president facing a resurgent Congress. This moment carries enormous historical significance because it marks the first time in Trump's second term that Congress has openly and successfully challenged his authority. The legislative branch is reasserting its constitutional role after decades of allowing presidents to accumulate power. The founders gave Congress the power to declare war for a reason. They wanted the people's representatives to have a say in sending Americans into harm's way. And for too long, Congress has abdicated that responsibility. Presidents of both parties have launched military operations without proper authorization. The War Powers Act was supposed to prevent this, but it has been routinely ignored. Now, Congress is finally fighting back. Now, lawmakers are reclaiming their constitutional prerogatives. This is not just about one president or one war. This is about restoring balance to the American system of government. The 4 House Republicans who broke ranks are now marked men in Trump's political universe. They have made powerful enemies who will not forget this betrayal. They face primary challenges funded by Trump allies. They face social media attacks from the president's most fervent supporters. They face threats and intimidation that come with defying the leader of the MAGA movement. But they calculated that the alternative was worse. They decided that losing their seats in November to Democratic challengers was a greater threat than Trump's wrath. They looked at their districts, listened to their constituents, and made the politically rational choice to support ending the war. Their survival instincts overcame their party loyalty, and that tells you everything about how unpopular this conflict has become. President Trump also finds himself increasingly isolated internationally because of this congressional rebellion. Foreign leaders are watching these developments closely, trying to determine whether the United States has a coherent foreign policy or a paralyzed government. America's allies are concerned about reliability. America's adversaries are probing for weakness. The chaos in Washington sends dangerous signals to the rest of the world. When the House of Representatives erupts against its own commander-in-chief during an active war, it creates confusion about who actually speaks for the United States. This uncertainty is strategically damaging and potentially destabilizing, but it is also a direct consequence of Trump's decision to bypass constitutional processes and launch an unauthorized war. The chaos is his creation, and now it is consuming him. The cascading effects of this week are already reshaping American politics, in ways that will be felt for years. The war powers vote was not an isolated event. It is the first domino in what could become a chain reaction. If Congress can successfully strip Trump of military authority, what else can it do? Can it limit his emergency powers? Can it constrain his use of executive orders? Can it reassert legislative authority across the board? The precedent established by this vote will be cited by future Congresses facing future presidents. This is constitutional realignment happening in real time. This is the legislative branch waking from its long slumber and remembering that it has teeth. The implications extend far beyond this specific conflict. This could fundamentally change the balance of power in Washington. Trump's own words about impeachment have added another layer of intensity to this crisis. In early January, at a private retreat with House Republicans, Trump delivered a chilling warning. He told them directly that if they lost the House in the midterm elections, he expected to be impeached. Trump said it himself. He knows the danger. He understands that Democratic control of the House would almost certainly mean another impeachment effort, and this time the charges would be far more serious than the previous ones. The unauthorized Iran war would be Article 1. The Epstein obstruction allegations would be Article 2. The abuse of the anti-weaponization fund would be Article 3. The evidence is accumulating and Trump knows it. His survival depends entirely on keeping the House in Republican hands. The midterm election has become something far more significant than a typical political contest. It is now a referendum on Trump's presidency. It is a judgment on whether he deserves to finish his term or be removed from office. It is a plebiscite on his fitness to serve. Voters understand this. They are not just choosing representatives. They are deciding whether to give Democrats the power to impeach and potentially remove Donald Trump. This transforms every congressional race into a national campaign about the president's future. Republicans are running to save Trump from impeachment. Democrats are running to gain the power to impeach him. And voters in the middle are grappling with the weight of this responsibility. The November elections will determine nothing less than whether Trump completes his second term. Dozens of lawmakers have already signed a formal petition calling for Trump's resignation or removal. Over 100 representatives have gone on record demanding action. The petition specifically cites constitutional violations, including the unauthorized Iran war, obstruction of justice related to the Epstein investigations, and abuse of the anti-weaponization fund. This is not a fringe movement. This is mainstream opposition from both parties. The petition has signatures from Republicans and Democrats. It has backing from establishment figures and progressive firebrands. It represents a genuine bipartisan consensus that Trump has crossed constitutional lines. And the momentum is growing. Every day brings new statements of support. Every week adds new names to the list. The movement to remove Trump is becoming institutionalized, formalized, and increasingly difficult to ignore. The tension between Trump and Congress has reached levels that would have been unimaginable in previous administrations. We are watching a constitutional crisis unfold in real time. The president is openly defying the legislative branch. He is daring them to act against him. He is treating their votes as meaningless and their authority as irrelevant. This is not how democratic governance is supposed to work. The separation of powers requires cooperation and mutual respect. But Trump has thrown those norms aside. He views Congress as an obstacle to be overcome rather than a co-equal branch to be respected. And now Congress is responding with unprecedented force. The explosion on the House floor was the sound of the legislative branch declaring its independence from executive domination. The cheers were the sound of democracy fighting back. The coming days will determine whether this conflict escalates further or reaches some kind of resolution. The Senate vote is the immediate next step. If the Senate passes its companion measure, Trump will have to choose between surrender and defeat. His best option at this point might be to accept the congressional resolution and claim that he is voluntarily ending the war because the mission has been accomplished. This would allow him to spin defeat as victory, at least for his most loyal supporters. But Trump has never been good at gracefully accepting losses. His instinct is always to fight harder, double down, and escalate. If he follows that pattern and vetoes the resolution, he will trigger an override vote that he cannot win. The result would be a humiliation that would accelerate his political decline. The smart move is to sign the resolution. The likely move is to veto it and suffer the consequences. What happens after this war powers battle is equally important. If Congress wins this fight, it will gain confidence to challenge Trump on other issues. The same coalition that stopped the Iran war could be mobilized to limit emergency powers. The same Republicans who voted against the president on military authority might be willing to vote against him on spending issues. The same momentum that produced this congressional rebellion could generate further rebellions on other fronts. Trump's authority is eroding. His control over his own party is slipping. His ability to dictate policy outcomes is diminishing. The war powers vote was a crack in the dam. Once the first crack appears, the structure becomes vulnerable. We may be witnessing the beginning of the end of Trump's dominance over American politics. The international community is watching all of this with deep concern. America's adversaries are calculating how to exploit this chaos. America's allies are wondering whether the United States can be trusted to honor its commitments. The instability in Washington sends dangerous signals about American reliability and resolve. But the congressional action also sends an important message. It demonstrates that there are still checks and balances in the American system. It shows that the president is not a dictator. It proves that the legislative branch can restrain executive overreach. This is the system working as designed, even if the process is messy and chaotic. The explosions on Capitol Hill might look like dysfunction, but they are actually democracy in action. Congress is doing exactly what the founders intended when they created a system of separated powers. The weeks ahead will be filled with drama, uncertainty, and high-stakes political maneuvering. Trump will fight back. He will attack his Republican opponents. He will try to pressure the Senate to block the resolution. He will deploy every weapon in his arsenal to maintain control. But the numbers are not in his favor. The momentum has shifted. The rebellion has grown too large to contain. Too many Republicans have concluded that their survival requires distancing themselves from Trump. The political incentives have changed dramatically. Supporting the president on this war was once the path to re-election. Now it is the path to defeat. And politicians always respond to incentives. Always. So we are likely to see more Republicans breaking ranks in the coming weeks. More defections. More votes against the president. More erosion of his political foundation. This moment will be remembered in history books as the pivot point of Trump's second term. This is when the balance shifted. This is when Congress stopped being a passive observer and became an active participant. This is when the president's authority began its decline. The cheers that erupted on the House floor were not just celebrating a vote, they were celebrating the restoration of constitutional government. They were celebrating a system that can still check power. They were celebrating American democracy surviving another test. The chaos was real. The tension was palpable. But the outcome was clear. Congress won this battle. Trump lost. And in that loss, the American system of government demonstrated its resilience. The founders built a machine designed to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. That machine is now working exactly as intended.